Well, good morning, everybody. I'm Jan Erickson from Stepping Aside, and welcome to the next in the Foundation in Magic series that I'm doing. It's going to be three parts again. This one's going to be on geomancy. Yes, I warned you it was coming, and here it is. So I've got all my notes ready. I've got everything. I got my runes out. I've got the house chart ready to go. That will be in part three. The shield chart will be in part two. I'll show you what that looks like blown up. And all of my notes are ready. I'm not going to actually create the chart as I go because I want to have a more cohesive experience here instead of going, it's this, it's that. I would rather just do it that way. So that's what I'm going to do. I've got it all ready to go. But today we're just going to talk about how we do it and what these runes mean. And just a little background on it. You're going to hear me talk about a guy named Agrippa, Cornelius Agrippa. He was an astrologer and a magist back in the day, hundreds of years ago. Don't know how many others. Levy might have done some of this. Eliphas Levy. A whole lot of different people were doing it, but I'm going to mention Agrippa in terms of the interpretations because he sees this maybe differently than in terms of the element, the planet involved, and the sign involved. Sometimes it's just one thing, sometimes it's the whole thing that he sees differently, and when I have that, I'm just going to tell you about it. I have my own way of doing this. Some of it involves the way he does it, and some of it doesn't. So more current geomancers that do this, I kind of go along with what they do. I kind of see what how they're viewing it. And some of his stuff, I'm like, what were you thinking here? So anyway, I like consistency. And so I've tried to do that in terms of my own interpretation. So let's move on then, now that you know all that. So anyway, again, 8 runes, 16 with their complement. And again, we're going to look at each one together with its complement. Now, how I do this, you can use little peas or lentils, pebbles, anything, but I've crafted runes because that's what I do. I craft my own runes. If you're going to do that, though, you're going to need 4. Let's see if you can see this. You will need 4. These are made out of hawthorn, okay? You'll need 4, and you're going to want to code them fire, air, water, and earth, okay? Each, not all of them on one, but 1 for fire, 1 for air, 1 for water, 1 for earth. You're going to have 1 dot on one side, and here is, that's the 2 dots, sorry. Well, here's fire, and that's how I did it. So I have 1 dot on the side that I've coded it with the right element, and I do that throughout, and then on the other side, you're going to have 2. 2 dots indicates a passive influence. 1 dot indicates an active influence, okay? Projective versus receptive. Again, we're talking earth energies and elemental energies here, sort of a blend between all of it. What you would do is you would throw them down and you would write down, you'd put them in the order, fire, air, water, and earth, and then you would write it down in the first box. You're going to throw them 4 times, so you're going to create the first 4, and from there, you're going to create the rest of the chart from these initial 4 boxes, okay? The initial 4 runes in those boxes. So that's the general idea then for a shield chart and how you do this. So with that, with that as a backdrop, let's go ahead and we'll talk about each of these runes. Now, I've gone ahead and I've made my own, even though you don't have to do this way. You can, though. If you don't want to play around with this, you could just simply create all 16 runes and start drawing them. But the advantage of doing it this other way is you would have to, well, to actually mirror it, you would have to then, whatever you draw, you'd have to put back in the bag. And then that way you're drawing this, you've got the full complement in there that you could draw from. Because when you do it this way, you could have the same rune appearing, in more than one spot on the chart. So that's what I mean. If you're going to do it, don't do it like you would with regular runes. Once you draw one, if you're going to do it that way, put it back in the bag so you've got all of them there before you draw again. So let's go ahead and start with Pur. This is Pur. So we're going to have 1 dot for fire, 1 for air, 2 for water, and 1 for earth. So more active influence here than passive. Pur reflects the fire element, although Agrippa says water. It's Mars energy. Also, Mars in Aries. So right away, you know that this is going to be something that is going to be a lot of vitality, a lot of energy. But here we're talking youthful energy. Both Pur and Puella, its complement, are both youthful energy. This is Puella. Remember, this was Pur. This is Puella. But in this case, we're looking at active principles or active energies for fire, water, and earth. And your passive influence is on air. Whereas the passive influence on this one was water. So with Puella, we're talking. I'm sorry, it was on Pur. I'm mistaken on the water energy. That's on Puella. That's where I have Agrippa sees it as water energy instead of air. Okay, but we're talking Venus and Libra. We're talking a fortunate type of a rune, and it's also talking about a young girl. So we're talking flighty energy versus a lack of impulse control with the boy. But you can see where how the two of them sort of blend together. Let's put this way. I always do this backwards. So Pur is a fire energy, whereas Puella is air, and again, Agrippa thinks it's water. We're talking Mars for Pur, Venus for Puella, or Puella, and Aries for the boy, for the little boy energy for Pur, and Venus, or excuse me, Libra for Puella. So you can see right away that with Aries and Pur, you're looking at something that is, it's lack of impulse control. It gets, and because it's youthful, it's not evil in that sense. It's just something that needs to be guided, right? The same with Puella energy. You're talking about a little girl, though. They're different. Little girls and little boys are different. The little girl is going to be a little more focused on rules, whereas the little boy is going to be, what can I do to break them? And so you're going to find maybe energy that's a little more obedient here, but at the same time, it's just flighty energy, maybe lost focus at times. So that's what you're looking at with the first two. Now, the next two we're going to look at are Amicio and Acquisitio. And so Amicio deals with loss. Acquisitio deals with gain and profit. Now, the other thing is, let me just stop here for a second. You're also looking at loss would be a negative, and then acquisitio would be a positive. So it doesn't necessarily mean the specific type of monetary loss or something like that. Amicio could actually indicate the loss of something that's happening. In other words, the end of something. So sometimes we just look at the energetic flow of it. If something doesn't seem right in your interpretations, just go to the energetic flow of it, taking away something. So if something bad's happening, it's ending. or it's being replaced by something good. So something positive is happening. So an increase versus a decrease. So a decrease of something, whatever it is, or an increase of something, whatever it is. but let's go ahead and talk about each one. Here we have Amicio. Active energy on fire, passive on air, active on water, and passive on earth. If we look at Acquisitio, we're going to see the opposite there. We're going to see passive. I'll show you together. I just have to turn it around. Passive on air, on fire rather, active on air, passive on water, and active on earth. They literally are the opposite of each other. So with Amicio, we're talking earth element. With Acquisitio, we're talking air. We're talking with Amicio, Venus and Taurus. Now, Agrippa would see this as fire energy, Mercury in Libra, but I don't. You could see it though as loss of balance if you're looking at Libra, but basically, it's essentially just loss here that we're looking at. With Acquisitio, we're looking at gain and profit. Now we're looking at the air element, Jupiter in Aries. So you can see expansive energy that might be motivating in that regard. Venus, you've got the love energy, partnership. Taurus could be stubborn, and so maybe you could look at maybe too much rigidity, too much structure, and you're not allowing love to bloom. I don't know. Or partnerships to develop maybe. So you can see the loss with Amicio. If you're talking about the loss of profit though, then I think you're talking about maybe just being too rigid to be able to get there, and to get what you need in life. But that's what you're looking at. You're looking at the difference between loss and gain when you look at Amicio and Acquisitio. Now, the next two we're going to look at are Via and Populus. And this is easy to see the energy there. You're looking at all active presence with Via and all passive presence with Populus. So basically what we're looking at here with Via, Via and Populus are both water element. They're both the moon, reflect the moon's energy, so change and cycles and all of that. But with Via, you're talking Leo, and Agrippa would say Capricorn, which I don't think so. But you're talking the way, the path, the journey that we take to individually. But then when we move to Populus, we're still looking at water energy there. It's still emotion. We're still looking at the moon and cycles and all of that, but we're looking at Cancer and how we come together with people. Think family, think unity with others and going in the same direction. So group behavior it's about being a follower in that regard. It's a passive influence. So it's going along with the flow, going along with the crowd. So, I think it's obvious here, the directionality and how we approach it matters. We're either going to pave our own way here and speak truth to power or whatever that involves, or we're going to go along and be united and on a shared path with others. And there's times when it's appropriate to lead, and there's other times that it's appropriate to follow, correct? Well, that's all we're talking about here when we're talking this type of energy. The next one is Albus and Rubeus. Albus and Rubeus are not just characters from, let's see, we want to do this right. So I need to have this on this side, and this on this side. I have to do everything. It's like being a weather person, like a weather girl, You can see that we have passive influences for fire and air, active for water, passive for earth. That's with Albus. And then with Rubeus, it's the opposite. We have passive for, am I doing this right? Yes. Passive for fire, active for air, and passive for water and earth. So here, the real issue is between air and water, isn't it? I mean, that's really what we're looking at. I hope I do this right. Yeah, between air and water. I didn't. There. You can see the positioning of the single dot, and that's how you know. There. Okay. So we're going to talk about Albus first. Again, it's an air element rune, Mercury and Gemini, although Agrippa sees it again as Cancer. But Albus, we're talking, if we think Albus Dumbledore, then, we're thinking the wisdom and sage and all of that, the wisdom that's gained over a lifetime, basically, and the leadership that's involved in all of that. Rubeus, on the other hand, is a water element rune, although Agrippa looks at it as fire. I don't. Mars and Scorpio is how I see this, and whereas Agrippa sees Gemini there, I just don't. It would be Mars and Gemini. Although, you are looking at, I see why he does it. You've got air there that's active, and the rest is passive, and so air is going to definitely be Gemini. Gemini is an air sign, but I don't think so. I look at this as it's considered an evil influence and passion run amok. So I don't think, in fact, I don't really even see it as evil necessarily, although not inherently so, although I think that there's enough stuff going on with Mars and Scorpio that definitely you're going to have issues of leadership and control that are emotion based. And so whenever you have that, you can really get out of sorts with that, and some interesting things can happen. But that's what you're looking at. You're looking at the difference here between the wise person and the one who lacks impulse control. But unlike poor, Rubeus is the adult version of it, okay? Rubeus is the adult version of it, but you can see the air element in both is active. Maybe a little too active for its own good, right? So that's what we're talking about the difference between Albus and Rubeus. And obviously in the movie, Rubeus isn't evil at all. And so, but if you look at him, he kind of is like a little boy, all grown up, who sort of lacks impulse control because he can't stop his mouth. He reveals things. Well, it's the same thing here. So you never know with this guy what he's going to do. Now, moving on to the Fortuna ones, we have Fortuna Major and Fortuna Minor. Basically, you can tell by the name, it's fortune, has to do with fortune, greater fortune and lesser fortune. Now, am I going to do this right? No, I'm not. I did it again. I just need to do it opposite, and then I'll be right. So you've got Fortuna Major here, Fortuna Minor here. There we go. I want to show them together so that you see how the energies shift. But with Fortuna Major, we're talking passive for fire and air and active for water and earth. And then the opposite for Fortuna Minor, active for fire and air and passive for water and earth. So the absolute opposite of it. They're both fire element runes. They're both governed by the sun, but Fortuna Major is governed by Leo. It's the sun in Leo, and Fortuna Minor is by the sun in Taurus. Now, Agrippa argues again with Fortuna Major. He views it as an earth element rune and the sun in Aquarius. I don't know. I disagree. So anyway, we're talking again, greater fortune versus lesser fortune. I look at these, again, it's very similar to Emissio and Acquisitio, where you're looking at the energetic aspects of it, although mostly this is dealing with income. But it doesn't have to be. If you need to do it more broadly, that's fine. If you need to interpret it that way, that's fine. But again, you're talking gain and loss, but you're really not. You're not talking about total loss here. So I tend to look at Fortuna Minor as like, and I've said this before on Somewhat Daily Tarot and Rune, I tend to look at this as something that is progress billing, progress along the path, that you're gaining something along the path. You're doing it in an incremental way, perhaps, whereas the Fortuna Major is the windfall. Okay, it's the final outcome of you've done all that you've done, and you've made all this progress. You've set everything in motion. You've done what you've needed to do, and here's the outcome, and that's your Fortuna Major, and it's promising a really positive outcome. Now, whether, again, it has to do with money or not, it can be interpreted either way. But generally speaking, that's what you're talking about with both of these. But again, one is fortune that's total, and then the other is incremental along the way. Now, another one that can have some evil influence in here is in the next grouping that we have. And it's going to be Caput Draconis, and I'm going to do this backwards so I get it right. Caput Draconis and Cauda Draconis, the Draconi. Now, these deal with the north and south nodes of the moon. I did it wrong. Okay. I thought I got it right this time. There we go. It's the head and tail of the dragon. So in this regard, your passive influence is going to be the fire element on Caput, and it's going to be the earth element on Cauda. Now, I'll go over I'll just do it as I go. Another evil influence, we've got, we've got Rubeus is one, Cauda Draconis is another, and Carcer is the other. And that's going to be one we're going to talk about in the next group. These three, it was thought by geomancers of old, probably guys, that say, well, if you draw this the first time before you're going to take the 4, right? That you're going to draw 4. You're going to throw down 4. But the first one, if it's one of these, Carcer, Cauda Draconis, and Rubeus, you have to destroy the reading. It's just too evil to continue. Well, you can decide what you want to do there, but I just think, lightweights, but that's just me. So anyhow, Caput Draconis is the earth element. It's the head of the dragon. It's Capricorn, the earth in Capricorn, basically, or not the earth in Capricorn, but the north node in Capricorn. It means new beginnings. Now, Agrippa would argue about that and say it's the north node in Virgo, but I don't know. To me, there's just there's something about the detail-oriented Capricorn that really gets us in a good way. It gets us on a good path, very prepared, very diligent, very practical. So I don't know. I understand the Virgo part because there's some practicality there, but I don't know. I kind of look upon it as Capricorn. Now, Cauda Draconis, on the other hand, fire element, the tail of the dragon. Sagittarius is the sign. It's the south node in Sagittarius, having to do with endings and karma. Basically, when you get Cauda Draconis or Caput Draconis, what you're looking at is either new beginnings along the new path, right? Especially if you had it paired with Vaya, for example, or if you had it paired, say you had Caput Draconis paired with Populus in a reading, you might interpret that to be new beginnings of shared purpose and direction with others. Okay. Otherwise, if it was paired with Vaya, then you would have new beginnings on your own new path. Maybe you're going to start a new job or something like that. Especially if Fortuna Major or Minor were involved with it, you might be looking at it that way. But you're also looking with Cauda Draconis, you're looking at karma, but not just karma from this lifetime, you're looking at karma from past lifetimes as well. So you always have to look at the situation when you draw Cauda Draconis. If something is not resonating for you now, then it could simply be that you have some things from another lifetime we call past, although it's not really. That the whole linear time thing is an illusion. So anyway, but you're looking at past life stuff that maybe you didn't resolve it, or maybe you took one side of the equation in another lifetime. Now you're taking the other side of the equation in this lifetime. So maybe you were the oppressor in one, and now you're the victim in this one. And you're exploring what that feels like to experience, basically. Because before we come here, the value judgment of it all doesn't exist. It's just something to look at. We don't think good or bad. It's just like, oh, that seems interesting. I did this one, that the last time I was, the bad person the last time, the oppressor last time of others. I'm going to go and see what it feels like to be oppressed now. It's just all about, our soul and the things that it's learning to take back to the collective soul experience of the Creator. That's all we're doing here. So let's see, moving on to Carcer and Conjunctio. We have Carcer. I'm going to do this two-handed. No, I'll do it here. Then I see what I'm doing. Carcer and Conjunctio. Carcer is about imprisonment, both by self and others, and Conjunctio is about joining in unity. So, if you add them together, you could ask yourself, am I impeding the flow toward unity and shared purpose with others? Or are others keeping me away from that? How is that? What's the dynamic going on there, right? But Carcer is considered an earth element rune, whereas Conjunctio is air. You can kind of understand that with air. It's communication and integration with others. So you can see Conjunctio there. But we're talking Saturn and Capricorn for Carcer. Now, Agrippa would say that's Pisces, but I don't know. I like the restrictive feeling of Saturn and Capricorn. So we're talking about, and again, it's an evil influence, and destroy the reading if you are so inclined. I'm not, but that's just me. Again, I think witches would have seen this different. I really do. I don't think that we would have aligned with the magicians and the astrologers of the day. I think we would have looked at you and said, what? You're going to do what with that? I don't think so. Anyway. We're talking imprisonment, self or others, it looks like a little cage, doesn't it? Active influences for fire and earth, passive for air and water. So you can kind of see the energy there that's either keeping you, contained, or, someone else is doing that to you, and you're sort of maybe letting that be, or there's nothing you can do, or you think there's nothing you can do, or whatever, and maybe not, but on the other hand, maybe it's just your mindset that's taking you there. Conjunctio, passive for fire, the opposite, passive for fire and earth, and active for air and water. So we're choosing, it's an intentional choice to come together with others, right? It's the air element, Mercury and Virgo, joining, union, makes sense. But you can see how the energy of self-imprisonment, which, typically we don't see it that way. We always feel imprisoned by everything and everyone else. But in truth, a lot of that is a choice, just like the choice to join together with others in Conjunctio is. So that's what we're talking about there. Now, lastly, and yes, we've come to the end almost of the video. We'll go and do 2 more, don't worry. So you're like, okay, this is fine. What is she going to do with it? Well, you'll find out. Here we have Tristitia. Is this Tristitia? Or is this Laetitia? What am I looking at here? I'm doing it backwards. Yeah, Tristitia. Except I have them upside down. But that doesn't look right. This is Tristitia. This is Laetitia. This is Tristitia. So all passive, from fire all the way down to earth, and earth is active. This would be Laetitia. The opposite. Fire active, the rest passive. So, Tristitia is an earth element rune. Laetitia is air. Tristitia represents Saturn in Aquarius. Now, here's one where I may agree more with Agrippa on this. He puts it at Saturn in Scorpio. So you've got some different, is sadness and grief, okay? And that's why I think Scorpio might be more relevant than Aquarius, other than the fact that Aquarians don't like to be contained. And when they do, they get very frustrated. So that may be, they're frustrated with the restriction maybe of Saturn, given that it's an earth element rune. That could be the source of the sadness and the grief and the evil. Laetitia, on the other hand, is air element, Jupiter in Taurus, joy and gladness. Now, Agrippa is Saturn in Taurus, and I just don't think so. I think that this is a case where he's mistaken. I think with Jupiter as an expansive planet, whether you're talking expansive outward or if it's in retrograde like it is right now, you're talking inner expansion. You're still dealing with joy and gladness. And I don't think you get that. I don't think you get that with Saturn. I think you get restriction with Saturn. And so I think it makes sense to have it with Tristitia, but not with Laetitia. So there I'm looking at, it's an air rune, Jupiter in Taurus, and it's joy and gladness. So okay, if you don't have Witch Notes, shameless book plug, you can get that on Kindle. If you don't want to buy it, just as a book, you can actually order it on Kindle as well. I would do that if you want to. I mean, you don't have to, but I would do that because it's an easy reference. It's got geomancy stuff in there. It has all of this, plus it has how to do a shield chart and how to do the house chart as well. But I will also include all of this over on the blog. And as soon as all three of these go up, I will, because I'm going to put them all up together. Well, actually, no, I won't. I'll go ahead and put this. Well, no, I really shouldn't I? I'll get this stuff up on the blog first, so that you can then, I'll have a link to it, and then you can go over there and you can see the different, my son's texting me with pictures of our grandchildren. So let me, well, that's just adorable. Oh my God, the grandson. Anyway, sorry. But in any event, I'll have all of this up on the blog before I post this stuff. And then that way, you guys will have a reference to it. And you can just go over there and grab the different blank charts, and I'll have just all of this up there just for your reference. So and I'll also probably, well, I don't know if I'll put it over on Patreon or not. I think I probably will. I'll put it over there too, just so you guys have reference to it. But hang in there, wait for the other two. It's going to get even better here in terms of the interpretation. We're going to really get into it, and we'll start with the shield chart first and move on then to the house chart. And you can just see how to do all of this, and maybe you'll like geomancy as much as I do when all is said and done. Once you see how it works, it's not difficult. It's just fun. So anyway, thanks for watching, and stay tuned for parts 2 and 3. They're coming, I promise. And be good to yourself, be good to one another, and blessed be.